Okay, let's unpack this. We are marking a genuinely crucial and, frankly, a fascinating milestone in the ongoing story of Manchester United. It's the one-year anniversary of Ruben Amorim taking the helm at Old Trafford.
It's actually hard to believe it's been a full calendar year. November 2024. The expectation back then was just, it was sky high, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The new era manager, the defined style he was meant to bring.
And now here we are about to do a deep dive into the raw reality of it all. The reality of navigating, well, what is probably the most relentless league in world football.
And what makes our source material so interesting today is the contrast.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have these candid, almost vulnerable personal reflections from Amorim himself from his Premier League interviews.
And on the other, you've got the fiercely passionate, often, let's be honest, completely polarizing feedback from the Daredevils fan community.
Exactly. So our mission isn't just to summarize these two sides.
Nope.
It's to sort of synthesize them into a 360-degree view for you. We're going to be dissecting the manager's own evolution, the deeply strange statistical puzzles his team presents.
The kind of stats that make you just scratch your head.
Right. And of course, the profoundly divided emotional state of the United faithful. This isn't just a simple review.
Not at all.
It's a necessary shortcut, really, for you to get your head around the sheer complexity of managing a global football club right now.
And we have some very specific anniversary markers that frame this whole discussion, which is quite neat.
We do.
Amorim's very first game in charge was exactly 1 year ago, leading into this week's fixtures.
A hard-fought 1-1 draw away at Ipswich Town.
Yeah, a very understated start, which was maybe a sign of the scale of the rebuilding job he had on his hands.
Understated is the word. But that just makes the contrast with his third match, his Premier League debut at Old Trafford, all the more staggering. They faced Everton, who, of course, they play again this week. And they annihilated them. 4-0.
I remember that. Marcus Rashford and Joshua Zirkzee both got braces.
It felt like a genuine statement of intent, didn't it? It set such a high bar.
A bar which I think we have to admit the team has really struggled to consistently reach since then.
And that inconsistency is the key tension we're exploring today.
Yeah, that 4-0 game is the perfect starting point because it's that flash of potential that the optimists, the believers, are still clinging on to.
But the reality, as Amorim himself now openly admits, has been a much more difficult and complex journey.
A journey of total adaptation, really. Which brings us perfectly to our first major theme. The coach's radical evolution under the pressure of the Premier League machine.
This, for me, is the most compelling part of the source material. Amorim is completely unambiguous. He has changed over the past year.
He has.
And this wasn't about minor tweaks. He fundamentally altered his core managerial approach. You rarely hear a successful manager, one who's celebrated for a specific tactical identity, admit that so openly.
It's massive, especially when you consider his whole success was built on this highly structured, possession-based football at his previous club. He gave us the definitive quote, didn't he?
He did.
I think I changed as a coach. I see things a little bit different. He explicitly says he came in with an idea.
A fixed idea.
How to play, how to build up in certain ways, and I changed that. I mean, that's basically an admission that the Premier League environment just rejected his established dogma.
So let's spend some time on that. Why? Why did the Premier League force him to rewrite his own rulebook? It wasn't just about the physicality of the league, was it?
No, not at all. It was, you could call it, a data-driven reckoning. He mentioned the intense focus on data in the English game as the key driver for his change.
Right.
He said, and I'm quoting him here, and you see this in the Premier League, we are really focused on data. So you need to change the way you do things. You need to pay attention.
And he's not just talking about general stats like possession or shots on target.
No. This is about the granular detail you need to survive against teams that are just relentlessly pressing you high up the pitch.
Right.
If your build-up play gives them even a fraction of a second too much time on the ball in a dangerous area,
You're punished.
you're punished. The data shows you will concede chances. It's the intensity of the opposition's analytical preparation that forces the change.
And this ties back to that bigger structural change we've heard about at United. We know they've been trying to integrate more advanced data strategies.
The reports about consulting with an F1 data guru.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't just about tracking how far players run. It's about finding those marginal gains in how quickly they make decisions.
Absolutely. The F1 comparison is perfect because that entire sport is defined by real-time, data-led optimization. And Amorim's tactical shift Needing to understand when to play for possession versus the specific strategy of, say, winning corners just to push opponents back, that suggests he's buying into that philosophy.
He's looking for the statistically safest or quickest or most disruptive action.
Even if it goes against his preferred style, his possession geometry.
And we have the most concrete, brilliant example of this tactical concession.
The goalkeeper.
The arrival of Senne Lammens, who has been explicitly given the license to kick it long when the game demands it.
Which, for a manager whose entire reputation was built on patient, short-passing build-up from the back.
It's a profound ideological compromise.
It really is. It runs completely contrary to that pure possession dogma that so many elite managers try to import. A pure build-from-the-back style is incredibly vulnerable in the Premier League.
Because teams just don't let you do it.
They don't. Teams like Liverpool or City, they use such a high, aggressive gegenpress. If you risk a short pass near your own box against that kind of intensity, the data shows the probability of a turnover.
And a high-quality shot for them.
It's just too high, so by allowing Lammens to go long, Amorim is choosing tactical efficiency and defensive stability over his own philosophical purity.
Yeah.
He's being pragmatic.
But doesn't having to completely rewrite the rule book, as you put it, doesn't that suggest a massive failure of initial preparation?
That's the perfect question.
If he was so celebrated for a specific successful style, why didn't he realize it just wouldn't work in the Premier League until he was already 6 months into the job?
And I think that highlights the difference between theory and, the lived reality of Old Trafford. At his previous clubs, he probably had more tactical dominance, more time on the ball, maybe slightly less technical opposition pressing him.
Okay.
At United, you're playing these high-stakes games every 3 days with minimal recovery time, and every single manager in this league has a specific data-driven plan to exploit your build-up.
So it's not a failure of prep so much as a realization.
Exactly. A realization that the risk-reward calculation changes completely when the stakes and the quality of the opposition are this high.
The pressure cooker of the Premier League is obviously relentless. But Amorim also opened up about the emotional and the off-field toll, which shows this adaptation wasn't just technical. It was deeply personal for him.
And this is where we get a critical glimpse into the human cost of managing a club of this size. Amorim confessed that last year he felt always overwhelmed with the games.
Which is a huge thing to admit.
A huge thing. He also said he felt really emotional all the time because he was struggling with the results. This level of honesty is so rare, and it just speaks volumes about the constant scrutiny you're under at United.
And it's not just the 90 minutes on the pitch, is it?
Of course not.
It's the headlines the next day, the social media storm, the endless analysis, the pressure from the board, the weight of history. He realized the job is far bigger than just tactics. He said his role is not just the pitch, but also managing all those outside factors and pushing for everyone across the whole club.
You could almost define it as a shift from being a passionate coach to becoming what you might call the CEO of emotions.
That's a great way of putting it.
And his main personal takeaway was the need to control the emotions a little bit better. So what does a CEO of emotions do? They have to project this unwavering calm to the media. They have to protect their vulnerable players from intense criticism.
And just maintain a steady front, even after a crushing last-minute loss.
Because if the manager cracks, the whole structure is at risk of cracking with him.
And the scale of that job is immense. At a club like Manchester United, every single decision, every result, has a global reverberation that a manager at a smaller club just doesn't experience.
No.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe some of that initial inflexibility, the stubbornness that the fans complained about, maybe it was a symptom of him being overwhelmed by the sheer size of it all, just trying desperately to cling to a strategy he knew in this terrifying unknown environment.
That emotional pressure is relentless, and it's no surprise it impacts tactical execution on the pitch.
And that overwhelming environment leads us directly to the consequence of all this adaptation and stress.
The central statistical anomaly that has defined their play this season.
The tale of two halves.
It's just bizarre.
This statistic is the ultimate illustration of their internal volatility. Statistically, Manchester United are phenomenal in the first 45 minutes of games.
They really are.
They have the joint most first-half goals in the entire Premier League this season, 11 of them.
Which suggests the tactical setup, the initial intensity, the preparation, it's all perfectly executed.
But then
The second half.
Then you flip the script completely. For the second 45 minutes, they have conceded the most second-half goals of any team in the league, 14.
It's just It's baffling. It completely negates their fantastic starts, and it's the reason they're hemorrhaging points and confidence.
So it raises that fundamental question.
Hmm.
Why do they fall off a cliff after the break? Is it physical? Is it tactical? Or is it purely psychological?
Well, Amorim offers a multifaceted diagnosis, and he tackles all three areas.
Right.
The primary and most damaging factor he cites is simply a loss of the intensity, which on the surface just sounds like a fitness or an endurance issue. It does, but he immediately complicates it by linking that loss of intensity to personnel and experience.
Yeah.
He specifically singles out the loss of key, experienced players due to injury or pain. He mentions Casemiro and Harry Maguire by name.
And he stresses their role isn't just in general play.
No, crucially, it's their importance in set pieces. He noted that people often don't take that into consideration, but the absence of those veterans clearly harms their ability to defend restarts late in games when they're under pressure.
So if that subtle reliance on set-piece veterans is the hinge on which the second half falls apart, does that not point to a flaw in the summer recruitment?
It's a critical question.
Did they focus too much on flair and not enough on core defensive leadership?
Well, set-piece defending is so complex. It requires physical dominance, which Casemiro and Maguire obviously provide. But more importantly, it requires organization. Are they zonal marking, man marking, a hybrid? When those veteran voices, the ones who are organizing the wall and assigning the markers when they're not on the pitch, the whole defensive structure can just dissolve under late pressure.
It's not just about being tired.
No, it's an issue of cognitive load and leadership, not just physical exhaustion.
But the truly damning element, perhaps, is the psychological breakdown he identifies. He observes that when United are ahead, when they're in a winning position, they lose the pressing impetus. The mindset just switches.
From aggressively pursuing another goal
to passively trying to not suffer a goal.
And that shift from predator to prey is the single most toxic mindset a top-level team can adopt. Instead of killing the game, they invite pressure, they drop deeper, they let opponents build momentum.
It's a psychological block. It speaks to a deeper fragility, maybe one that's been rooted in years of inconsistency at the club.
So is this a failure of his halftime intervention?
That's the question, isn't it? Why can't he arrest this shift? If he sees the team losing impetus, surely the halftime team talk should be all about maintaining that offensive aggression, not just tightening up at the back.
It raises that exact question. Halftime is the critical moment. If the physical capacity is there, and the high first-half goal count suggests it is, then the failure has to be in either the messaging or the tactical substitutions, or both.
Yeah.
When he says the problem is both mental and physical, he's essentially admitting he needs a psychological reset on how the team manages a lead. He needs to make them understand that retreating into a shell is, statistically, far more dangerous than just keeping that aggressive press on.
So the solution, as he frames it, isn't simple. They need to embrace the idea that if you're 1-0 up, your mindset has to be to find another opportunity to kill the game,
rather than just survive the next 45 minutes.
And this statistical volatility is exactly why the fan sentiment we're about to explore is so utterly charged.
We have to turn our attention to the digital stands now,
Yes.
the Red Devils community, because their comments provide the emotional context for all these numbers.
If you want proof that this team evokes wildly conflicting emotions,
just read those threads.
the fan base is profoundly polarized.
It's a truly divided camp, and it reflects the inconsistency of the results and, crucially, the philosophical arguments about the club's identity that Amorim's tactics have provoked.
On one side, you have the optimists, the believers, and they're responding directly to Amorim's recent admissions of adaptation.
These believers are, in their own words, rooting for him. They're hoping he can find the magic formula to solidify the team.
Their support seems to be rooted in a pragmatic appreciation of his willingness to change.
Especially after what some of them saw as extreme stubbornness in the early games, they see his adaptation as a sign of strength, not weakness.
Yeah, one commenter noted their appreciation for his honesty, especially after seeing him act, and this is their quote, stubborn as a mule at the start. For these fans, the fact that a celebrated coach admitted he had to basically throw out his own tactical identity to get results with this United squad, that's a sign of managerial intelligence. Self-awareness.
It suggests he's putting the club's immediate needs above his own ego.
And they are seeing tangible returns on that adaptation.
They are. They're pointing to necessary tactical shifts, which have resulted in players like Casemiro looking much better suddenly, and the team is scoring goals with more consistency.
There's a sense of cautious hope, especially after bouncing back from what was clearly a low point.
The sources mention the Brentford game as a moment of crisis.
Right. And now they're hoping to build on that run.
But the real emotional weight comes from the other side.
It does.
For every one of those optimists, there's a skeptic who is fundamentally unconvinced. They see this recent upturn as a temporary bandage, not a long-term cure.
And the critics focus heavily on tactical inflexibility and, I think most damningly, a conflict with the club's history.
Their complaints are very pointed. They criticize what they see as a crippling inflexibility, particularly his obsession with Bruno.
Even while admitting he might be their best player.
Yes. And an alleged lack of faith in Mainu, suggesting the manager is prioritizing certain established, expensive players, regardless of their form or future potential.
And this is where the discussion goes beyond just results. It becomes about the club's identity crisis.
Absolutely.
There's a strong emotional argument about a historical style conflict. Critics are arguing that he is ripping up the history of this great club by implementing a style that they feel is inherently not working.
And we really need to unpack what that history means to the United Faithful.
We do.
To really understand that criticism, you have to get your head around the United way. This philosophy, forged under Busby and then amplified by Ferguson, it relies on several pillars.
The Youth Academy.
The integration of academy youth is number one. The Busby Babes, the class of '92. Then you have attacking wing play. And a relentless, high-tempo, dominant style of football.
And Amorim's preference for experienced players, his earlier emphasis on possession, and his occasional sidelining of traditional wingers.
The critics see that as a direct contradiction of that ingrained club DNA.
It's a profoundly serious charge at Old Trafford. They see his continued reliance on certain veteran players, even when they struggle, as going against the club's ethos of nurturing youth and meritocracy.
Yeah, the complaint about the lack of faith in Mainu isn't just about one player.
No.
It's a symbolic protest. It's a sign that they feel the manager is ignoring the academy pipeline in favor of established names.
And their ultimate criticism ties back directly to our statistical puzzle.
The second half collapses.
Exactly. It's not just that they aren't winning consistently, it's how they are winning. That second half issue fuels their complaint that every victory feels like an ass-puckering 30 minutes at the end because he doesn't know how to close out games.
The skeptics are relentless. They're questioning if the team has looked dominant in any Premier League game under him. They suggest this current winning run is purely down to individual moments of brilliance, not some sort of structural dominance.
And they're frustrated with his defensive rotation. One comment said he makes this many substitutions to their defense as much as him, suggesting there's just confusion and no continuity at the back.
It's clear that for the most vocal critics, it's a binary choice. If the results aren't there and the style doesn't fit the historical United way,
then the manager is inherently failing.
The pressure on Amorim isn't just to win, it's to win the right way.
Crucially, though, we have to recognize the counter-argument that exists within the fan debate itself. It adds essential nuance.
It does. It prevents it from being a simple in or out discussion.
You have fans defending his tactical depth, arguing that the formation changes 100 times during the game, depending on the phase or way of play.
They argue that what some people see as inflexibility is actually just a misunderstanding of modern, fluid tactics. They push back. They say Amorim is constantly adjusting based on whether they're in a defensive or offensive phase.
And that his reliance on experienced players like Casemiro is just a necessary short-term stabilizer while the team adapts.
Exactly. This internal debate really shows the philosophical complexity Amorim is facing. He's trying to drag this massive tradition-bound club into the era of tactical fluidity.
And he's facing deep resistance from those who cling to a more rigid historical identity.
That whole philosophical tension, which is driven by the stats of the second half collapse and those historical expectations, it brings us to the immediate tactical laboratory.
The upcoming clash against Everton.
Yes. This rematch, a year on from that 4-0 demolition, gives us a brilliant insight into the detailed preparation now required of the adapted Ruben Amorim.
The context is everything. A year ago, it was a celebratory, dominant home win.
Now, the manager is acutely aware that facing Everton this week is going to be dramatically different. It's the perfect test case for his year of learning.
And his statement on the difficulty is telling. He fully expects the rematch to be really, really tough to win the game.
That's managerial realism, setting in after a year spent navigating the Premier League. He's no longer relying on simple momentum or home advantage.
No. And he offers genuine, specific credit to the opposition. He recognizes Everton as a better team than they were and credits David Moyes for doing an amazing job in organizing them.
Which signals the profound respect that Premier League managers have for each other. They know how quickly teams can improve and how structurally solid opponents can be.
But what stands out most for me is the level of detailed tactical scouting Amorim reveals. He goes beyond the usual platitudes and gives us specifics. It shows just how deep the pre-match prep now goes. It illustrates his new, data-driven pragmatism.
Exactly. He knows Everton are really compact, which suggests United will have to solve a low block. That's a significant tactical challenge. And then he shows his focus on underlying performance. He dismisses misleading recent results, like Everton's 3-0 loss to Tottenham. He notes that the goals in that game were primarily from set pieces, not sustained open play dominance by Spurs.
He's focusing on the repeatable tactical patterns, not the anomalies of the scoreline.
He's looking for the weak spot that isn't immediately obvious in the final result.
And he names specific opposition threats, which indicates personalized preparation for United's defenders.
Jack Grealish, who he says is doing really well and can give weight to that team, and Iliman Ndiaye, who he just calls an amazing player. This shows the detail of the individual threat assessment required now.
But he goes a step further. He actually anticipates their lineup. He's almost predicting Moyes' selections based on tactical necessity.
He mentions the potential use of James Garner at right back, which indicates he's thought through their rotational options.
And here we come full circle, right back to the importance of set pieces, which he cited as the crucial vulnerability in his own team's second-half collapses.
He anticipates Jake O'Brien is going to play because of set pieces for Everton.
So he knows. He knows Moyes is likely to try and maximize his own aerial threat because he's scouted United's defensive vulnerability in that exact area.
That granular level of detail, predicting a specific defender will play because of set pieces. It just highlights the marginal gains focus that is now essential to Premier League survival.
This preparation shows that while Amorim may have been emotionally overwhelmed a year ago, he is now operating with the clinical, data-informed focus required.
Not just to survive, but potentially to succeed long-term. He has learned to manage the external volatility by becoming meticulously organized internally.
So if we step back and synthesize this incredibly volatile year, we see a tenure defined by three inseparable elements. Personal adaptation that required him to shed his core tactical identity. Statistical inconsistency driven by a profound psychological fragility in the second half.
And a resulting profound internal debate among the fans about the club's long-term philosophical and tactical direction.
It's been a year of contradictions that would break a lot of managers.
It would. You have a coach who had to change his core beliefs just to survive. A team that can be the best first-half side in the league and the worst second-half side.
And a fan base simultaneously praising his self-awareness while desperately trying to defend the club's historical DNA against his pragmatism.
And this whole narrative doesn't exist in a vacuum, does it? It's happening against a backdrop of these broader structural changes at the club.
Reports of a cultural reset, the involvement of that F1 data guru in marginal gains analysis.
And the promise of a truly rebuilt summer under the new structural framework. Amorim himself said he was glad he arrived 6 months before the summer window opened.
Yeah, so they could avoid a lot of mistakes and use all that suffering to change things in the summer.
That sentiment that this year was a necessary period of suffering and learning and cultural assessment is critical to understanding the long-term vision.
He sees this first year not as a performance audit, but as a deep cultural and tactical diagnostic phase.
But that philosophical position, that this is just a diagnostic phase, that brings us to the core tension of the modern management job, especially at a global club like Manchester United.
Done.
You have Amorim admitting he was overwhelmed, that he felt highly emotional due to results, and that he had to completely change his initial ideas just to adapt to the speed and scrutiny of the league.
It reveals the immense personal and professional toll required to manage at this level, where culture and history have to somehow coexist with immediate, ruthless results.
So for you, the listener, the ultimate question to mull over is this. Considering all of Amorim's admissions, he needed this year just to diagnose the club's issues.
How much time should a manager at a club like Manchester United truly be given to implement a long-term cultural and tactical vision before the cold, hard necessity of immediate, consistent results and satisfying the historical expectation of the fan base takes precedence?
That tension between process and outcome, between visionary planning and the urgent need for second-half consistency, is the defining struggle of the modern manager. For Amorim, the next 6 months will determine whether his personal adaptation has been enough to survive the scrutiny of Old Trafford.
A truly fascinating and tumultuous year, and one that has undoubtedly prepared him for what's ahead. We'll certainly be keeping a very close eye on those results,
Especially those second-half performances.
starting with Everton this week.